We're in those few days between the end of Pesach and Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day. And one of the key things to think about during this time is that they had no trouble finding volunteers. Among German officers ordered to carry out mass slaughters, and among the soldiers, among the occupied nations, where there were many collaborators, they had no trouble finding people who were willing, not only in the mass slaughters of Jews and others targeted in the Shoah, but also in mass slaughter of Poles in 1939 upon the invasion of Poland, or the starvation and murder of millions of Soviet citizens and of Red Army soldiers, POWs. They had no trouble finding people to collaborate. When everyone else was doing something inhumane, there were many, the vast majority were willing to follow along. The question is, how can we not be like this? Because we shouldn't imagine this was something totally unique about German society or about European society or about the 1930s and 40s that led people to do this. This is something within, I would think, every society. Part of how we guard against it, I keep coming back to this great teaching from Rabbi Ethan Tucker of Hadar, speaking of the Passover story, that part of the revolutionary nature of the Passover story is that it's not that everyone marched on the palace and went out and overthrew Pharaoh. It's that the key moment of the last night in Egypt is that everyone gathers in their own homes and they slaughter the lamb. They declare their freedom in their own homes. It's just their family, or just their family and their closest friends. And it happens individually, parent to child, friends to each other. That's where redemption begins, and that's where that central sense of morality, of dedication to God and not to pharaohs, not to despots, where that begins. That we begin there. Having a strong internal sense of morality in our homes is designed to try and prevent us from being the ones who go off the rails, even when society goes off the rails. We should be humble and not imagine that we would be among the heroes. We have to build up that muscle. Remember that we have to stand up no matter what for what's right, because as we remember that people were all too willing to slaughter their friends and neighbors when it seemed like they could gather more power by doing so, we got to guard against that will to power. And where that begins is each of us in our own home. Shabbat Shalom.